Why do you think that in our program people are having one going through pain, as you said it, but also able to get to the other side of that pain? What is it that we're doing together that allows that to facilitate?
I believe that we truly allow the pain to be first and foremost. We acknowledge it, not in order to wave, but to really bring it presence. Because oftentimes what I notice is that whether it's emotional, mental, or physical pain, we try to minimize it. We try to, like take the next pill to somehow arrange ourselves around it. But what we're doing in the program is like we're bringing it out there and we're actually giving it the full attention. So whether it's in the adjustments or we speak directly to it, or we take our crutches and we fast for a couple of days, or we breathe through it, we bring it to the front of the stage. And so when that pain gets all our attention in a very loving and held way, things can actually move. This is the beginning of where and how energy starts moving. I think we've been doing it long enough to have so much evidence that it truly does change his life. There's so many people that have done whole body reset or fresh beginning that their life were just reset in a whole new way. Sometimes moving through not the easiest times in between, but then settling in a new reality. Yeah. Finding partners, settling in different places in the world, finding healing for issues in their bodies that have been persistent for years, finding a glimpse of like, how can I connect through light in a different way?
I have a few teachers that have meant a lot to me in life, and one of them spoke about everything as toxemia. Every disease, every illness, every flu, every COVID, every, inflammatory joint, it's all toxemia. It's a buildup of something that's not supposed to be there. And, to open something that's stuck, a closed circuit where there's poison living in there and poisonous emotions and parasites and acid, it requires first the courage to open up that door, I think. Um, and there's all these different ways that many of them I learned from you, that it seems to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, but most of them are not easy at first. Like we just started talking about, like you want to exercise, kind of hurts until you get moving, or breath work, or ice, or fasting, or any of it. It's like there's like this difficulty, and if you're willing to go through it, if you're willing to experience it and be with it, yeah, then whatever's stuck can move. And I think that's the magic, is taking people out of all their excuses. It's so easy to jump on
Mhm.
Netflix and smoke a cigarette and whatever, so you don't have to feel it. But we don't let them do that.
It's not that neither of us believe in the path of suffering. It's not that.
No,
It's not
not
like
at all.
let's go for pain. Not at all. But we also, because we've walked that path and we tried those all the way through it, we also know that bypassing it doesn't get us into healing. And also, I know, and I think you know, that our fear to change is actually sometimes bigger than our fear to still hold a disease within us. At one point, the fear of change doesn't have a grip on you any longer. And this is where healing really begins. And so perhaps what we do more than anything is inspire, hold people into that belief that change is possible, healing is possible, and holding each other hand and everybody that joins us hands to go through those moments where the fear of change is stronger. And we know that what we resist persists, and we move through this resistance together, and then something new opens up. You've been going through a pretty massive shift in your life in the last few years. And it is fascinating to watch how you walk your talk, and how you were brave enough to shed layer upon layer and stay in the mystery and the unknown and stand in front of many people, I'm sure, that are do not understand what's going through you. But what's more interesting for me to hear is how that shift of a path, how your inner realizations, how do you find them influencing your healing abilities, your work, your
Yeah.
functional work? How is it like? What do you bring new to this retreat? I haven't seen you for almost a
No,
year, and
I'm glad you asked that. I realized that what I saw on a global scale, I felt like was happening physically inside. I'm a total junkie when it comes to the skull and fascia and the breath and the diaphragm. Biggest aha in the last year is that, that twist that happens within us, it can be released, but it's but it's got to be done on an emotional and physical level. And so I started trying to physically open my body, and I used movement and breath as a way of doing that. And every time I was able to connect it, I would realize it was connected to some layer of my belief systems that I had to let go of. And so I'd feel a twist right here in my skull and neck, and I'd be like, "Oh, okay, that's desire for something." Or I'd find one right through my chest, and oh, this tightness in my chest, and I realized that that's anger and bitterness I'm holding. And then for me, the word surrender is by far the biggest word, because getting rid of the toxicity, getting rid of the twist, is always an act of surrender.
so who would you say this program is for, Tim?
I think this program is for people who are feeling stuck. A lot of people are trying a lot of things and feeling like it's not working, especially when it comes to their health. Most people that I talk to feel like they're more stressed. They feel like they are more burnout. They feel like they're more exhausted, and everything they're trying isn't working. And I think it's at that point that um, a pilgrimage is necessary. It's a moment where you're willing to step away from your life and look at it from a different perspective.
Yeah, I remember for years that you were willing to say about yourself that I'm that guy, I'm that practitioner that people will reach when they kind of like got into a dead end. And I so appreciate it. It's so hard to even say something like that. And I saw again and again how you did manage to shift people that were lost for years in like trying to figure out what's going on with them, and who can actually help them with that. And I know you're also a huge fan of the skull and diaphragm story, and I noticed that it's becoming more and more part of your practice in the last few years. Do you want to share something about that?
Like if the universe were to put together like the perfect resonating device, it would be the human skull. And every collapse in consciousness, every disease, every dysfunction is represented in the human skull. Um, Doctors have been talking about this for years. Like in Belize, I show up and there's these beautiful people, right? And they have these wide faces and these bright white eyes, and they're smiling. And 1 second you look at their face and you're like, this is a happy, vibrant person. And what I saw um, when COVID happened and when, half the world admitted that they went into depression, is that there was this twist in the face. One eye would sink in. I could see the distortion. It's like the light went out in the eyes, and with it, the ability to breathe through the nose went away. And the more I studied, like why the human skull is so important, the more I became amazed. It's like literally the Holy Grail story, right? Because this ability to breathe through your nose is what sends the fluid up and down the spine. And so to free your skull is to free your life, emotionally, spiritually, physically. And that's why I've become
Mm.
obsessed with it.
And you believe also that those adjustments that you do around the skull and around the spine, they also have influence on autoimmunity, on mental and emotional states. You believe it's all connected.
Yeah. In chiropractic school, that they teach that there's only one thing, right? The chiropractors call it universal intelligence. The Chinese call it
Mm.
chi or prana or whatever you want to
Mhm.
say. It's life
Mhm.
flowing through you. And the
Mhm.
human skull, the craniosacral pump, the ability to breathe through the nose is literally the function of the universal intelligence within you. And so when that stops, when that ceases, you are disconnected from all of life. And to the manipulation that I do through the skull, through the breath work, through the sound, through all the things that we're doing, it doesn't fix you. No doctor can fix you, but what it does is creates a series of um, conditions where you are able to surrender and you are able to reconnect. It can take away the interference. And so on some people like Todd, right? One time, boom, done. He was so ready. Other people, there's so much dissonance, there's so many layers that it's, a much longer journey. But it's
Mhm.
always, always, always restoring the motion of the skull, the connection with universal intelligence, and the breath is you cannot heal if you don't do these things. And that's really what I think we're trying to do in our own creative, unique way.
Mm. Restoring the motion of the skull. I really love it. And so maybe you can speak a little bit more about how does it look in the retreat itself? Like, what do you do? Like, you're not, you're not going into people's skulls. How does it look? And how is it different than going into and other chiropractic adjustments? And then maybe yeah, we can speak a little bit about the content of the retreat itself.
Well, I think the environment has a lot to do with it. So I'll first speak on the medical. Some of the things that I have done is I do manipulation on people that always involves two people. So when we do the stretching of the spine, right? Someone is on both ends of that twist, the skull and the pelvis, and we're opening it together. When we do ceremonies where we're touching them, I actually now have both people singing into them while touching the two ends of the twist. Um, and the when I stick the balloon up the nose, expanding, I actually started doing two balloons at the same time. And what all of this is doing is healing is bringing balance. It's bringing balance from top to bottom, left to right, front to back, masculine to feminine. And when we use ceremony and we use things coming at it from both directions, the twist isn't able to run away. We get on both ends of it. And if someone is ready, willing, able to feel it, surrender it, then yeah, it's so powerful. It's like we are having an intervention.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I I connect with that because I felt it in my own healing, but I witnessed that unbelievable amount of times, I would say, in your presence and in the life that I lived and witnessed how healing takes place. And this is why we dare to call this work quantum leap or quantum retreat, because there is something there which ignites a shift. Now, what would you do with that shift is up to you, right? but it's so powerful that it really brings into a new perspective. And I can say that also we've been fortunate enough to still be in contact with many of those people, even 3, 4, 5 years later, sometimes, and I know that every single one have been touched in a way that their lives today are not the same as they were. And we're deliberately taking a week away so we can fully focus on ourselves with no distractions. That is one of the things, or maybe the first steps that allows that quantum interventions to happen. Yeah. And then bringing into play the the different components of really like having it fully grounded in the medical world and your experience as a functional practitioner, and going as far as you went in the last few years where you really touched the higher realms of how this connects to that, where is distortion in the translation of the higher to the lower, and bringing it all the way back into the body, into the skull and the spinal and the hip relations. And so you do that work, and then we come with another layer of stripping the body from, you know toxicity, as you said it before. So we go into 2 days of juice fasting, which is, it's so much easier to do than most people think. But when we're like in heaven and are nourished from all directions, then doing that and then supporting it with the best foods on earth that we know of, yeah, with what they offer in Terra Encantada, and then fortified with so many super herbs and super foods. So our vibration really comes to the highest that we can manage to create, right? And then supporting it with another layer of the emotional body and how to open it up and crying those things that could not really be seen and felt before. We enter a lab, and that lab brings something very, very unique into play. And so I I want to ask if there is anything else that you feel is important to share right now. And maybe we can do it again and just like keep on opening layers of what this work is about.
Yeah. Well, I think maybe this will be the last thing I say. I think people are being called right now. I think it's a period of extreme separation. And we're seeing people who are living in heaven and living in hell in the same world right now. And there's a whole bunch of people that are, I think, being called. They're being called to heal for a very, very high reason. And it's coming over and over and over again. I have to get to the other side of this. I have to heal. And I think it's for those people. And those are the people I want to see. And our goal is to be a catalyst for those people, just to help them get from the conceptual needing to heal to the other side and walking them, through both hell and heaven, as you said it earlier. And
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah. And I want to add to that that then A, the environment, B, the specific place that we're doing it, it brings so much, well, A, serenity, because it's just gorgeous. But it really opens that ability to see the beyond. Yeah. And maybe we didn't emphasize that enough, but it's fun. There is a lot of fun going on in that week, yeah, of just like liberation and trying new things
yeah,
and being in the most beautiful places that we know. Um, and that's part of it. Yeah, it's kind of like a Luna Park for adults of like, ooh, okay, so heat therapy, but in a ceremonial sweat lodge way. And then cold therapy, but in the most beautiful, like watching the ocean and diving into a cold plunge after we breathed and worked for it and prepared our bodies. And then everything we do is kind of like in the highest quality, but also in the most fun way that we can think of. And we've been walking a pretty fun way in our lives.
I think we're both pretty cool, and it's a pretty cool retreat.
All right. So thank you so much. And for whoever hears us, we we have more to share and we are happy to hear your questions. And if you feel called for hearing more and having a consultation with either Dr. Tim or myself, we are more than happy to do that. All the details of the retreat will be written down so you can see when and where. And thank you so much. Thank you, Dr. Tim.
Thank you, Tanmaya. Thank you. Anyone who watches this, I pray it brings some healing, just realizing that we're doing this.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you, love.